Sebastian Vettel is one of the most highly successful and highly regarded sportsmen on the planet.
Over one lap, he is unbeatable.
Still only 26, he's already earned 4 consecutive Formula One drivers' titles and comparisons with the best drivers the world has ever seen.
Without doubt, Vettel has become one of the greats.
Sebastian will drive any vehicle on the limit. His sense, feel and touch is something quite unique.
He's not thinking, oh my God, I've blown it. He's thinking, how do I mend this situation?
You need then to have a strong head. Speed alone is not enough.
Vettel's valuable and voluble contributions for Infinity Red Bull racing on the track have become the stuff of legend.
Sebastian, when he's in the car, yes, yes, yes!
Less well known, at least till now, is his reputation as one of Formula One's most engaging ambassadors away from it.
Over to you.
Okay. He's a regular boy, and I think he's stayed pretty much that way. He's not been too affected.
The difference between him and a lot of other drivers is he seems to enjoy it.
The 2014 season's new engine rules promise a fundamental realignment of the sport Vettel has dominated for so long.
It's going to require the drivers to come up with a completely different way of driving.
This programme celebrates the career of the reigning world champion as he prepares for what is sure to prove his biggest test to date.
That's the spice in the soup, that's the challenging bit, and that's what we like.
Sebastian Vettel, since 2010, has laid the foundations of greatness. In terms of talent, he's one of the best drivers Formula One's ever seen.
He's not rolling out of clubs with different girls on his arm. I think Sebastian's brought an awful lot to Formula One. He's a perfect advert for the sport.
He's just very engaging.
And finish off.
He always has something to say. Invariably, it's the right thing.
Safety first.
Whether it's an advert for Infinity or an interview with the BBC, he always gives you something that you can use.
I think the jokes are still as bad as they used to be.
For instance, I keep on interviewing him in the grid. And I remember one day there was Sebastian in the middle of 2 McLarens. And I asked him, how do you feel in the English sandwich? Will they like the German sausage? And then he said, okay, that's one thing, but don't forget the little tomato back of me, because there was Felipe Massa in the Ferrari. Sebastian, he's definitely listening to what you're asking and answering the question.
Of all the circuits that you've raced at, which one would you say was your favourite and why?
I like circuits with quick corners because you need big balls. that's it.
What impresses me most about Sebastian is he seems a regular, very nice young man. He is one of the most approachable drivers in the paddock.
Sebastian does seem to engage with people. He seems to have a real warmth which crosses language barriers, and people like to see him. I've done quite a few events with Sebastian, one of them in Japan, and people had been sleeping outside to meet him. When we were on stage talking, he was very aware that little children had been outside for hours and hours to meet him.
He is the driver I would be most happy going up to, sticking your hand out and having a chat about anything and everything, and not just Formula One.
One aspect of Seb's character that comes through whenever he lets it is his sense of humour.
Question to you, sir. At what point in your development as a racer did you realise that you were good?
Just now, you calling me sir.
He's a very funny guy to watch. He's very witty at press conferences, often in English, which we forget is his second language because he has such a good command of it.
Yeah, must have done something right.
I think it's a shame, actually, for the sport and for Seb that he doesn't drop the veil just a little bit, because there are moments when he is just jaw-droppingly funny.
I have a question as well. Who's not happy with his paycheck or her paycheck at the end of the month? Raise your hand now. One. Over to you.
Okay. Sometimes he's calling me and say, hey, Kai, come over, come over. Do you have a new joke? Any new jokes for me?
If he likes you, he'll let you know. If he doesn't like you, he'll let you know. If you ask a stupid question, that'll instantly get, mentioned.
Good point, Lee. Good point. Good point.
We've had good days and we've had bad days, but we've had a lot more good days.
We've been here earlier.
Yeah. Did you do some donuts on the open road?
Yes.
He gives everyone that sort of sense of a bit of sparkle. This is good, I like this treatment. But when you meet Sebastian, I doubt there'd be anyone who walked away and said anything bad about him.
One Christmas Eve, there was the go-kart under the tree and anything. And I was small, I was 3.5.
Sebastian Vettel has been winning people over one way or another since climbing behind the wheel of a go-kart as a child. His first significant opponent was one of his older sisters.
Yeah, I was very selfish. So I kept going until the fuel was, I ran out of fuel, and then she decided to stop. I kept going, and then the racing started, but there was no sort of plan. When I was 15, I did the transition to cars. That's when I think when it really started to be more professional, because there was also more money involved and it got more serious.
What's needed to rise from the lower ranks of motorsport up to Formula One is a consistent record of success. Teams who are recruiting F1 drivers, they look for someone who's a proven winner in the lower formulas, and that's something that Vettel very much was. He's been exceptionally good in Formula BMW in particular, and later on in Formula Nissan 3.5 as it was then. And he'd always shown terrific speed and the ability to adapt each time to the demands of the new formula as he went along.
In 2004, as a 17-year-old, Vettel won 18 races of the 20-event series in which he was competing, supported by a family already familiar with the routine of race weekend, following outings to hill climbing events entered by his father Norbert.
Vettel, at every level, every new challenge, he's always been able to raise his game, always be quick, but without making many mistakes. And that's been very true of his F1 career as well.
In 2005, Vettel's speed and maturity was rewarded with a first Formula One test drive for BMW Williams. By the following year, he was being measured up for a seat as BMW Sauber's test driver and coming to terms with the rigour and responsibility his new position required.
At the beginning, everything is just impossible. The decel is the biggest thing. You hit the brakes, you have to be careful, your head not going down, and, keep it up to look at the track, and it's just Formula One.
It was Turkey 2006 when he was the Friday driver for BMW Sauber. I just remember thinking how young he looked, like a sort of child's book, just open at the first page. Didn't immediately think, this guy looks like he's the next Ayrton Senna, but just how natural and happy he was in his own skin.
Called in to replace the injured Robert Kubica at the 2007 US Grand Prix, Vettel finished 8th, becoming, at the age of 19, the youngest driver ever to win a Formula One World Championship point. Later in the 2007 campaign, Vettel joined Toro Rosso, struggling in his first few races, but making a more memorable impact at the Japanese Grand Prix, although not quite in the manner he'd hoped.
When Sebastian Vettel really turned up on my radar was when he crashed in Fuji into the back of the Red Bull, and you think a lot of young drivers wouldn't be able to cope with that.
It took him a while to get back off the garage, give an interview, and in the interview he was giving me, he starts crying.
Clearly it's very stressful for him, and I thought that's one tough head on young shoulders.
This showed how much passion is involved and how quickly he learned from a mistake. So you could see that this guy was developing and improving himself from race to race.
The great racing drivers of the world have always had more capacity to understand what's going on around them.
It's almost like a serenity that no matter what's being thrown at them, they can handle it. They can go onto team radio, they can ask what's happening, they have an interest in what Fernando Alonso's doing, maybe 3 places behind them. It might be lap 22, but they're already thinking of what might happen on lap 61.
A world champion probably uses 70% of his capacity to drive the car, leaving 30 available to understand what's going on with the racetrack, with his own car, strategy, who's doing what. A very good racing driver might need 80% of his capacity to drive the car. The champions have this ability where controlling the car is easy for them.
Seb has a very good downloading memory capacity, if you like. He can memorise and visualise everything that happens on the circuit in very fine detail, which is invaluable even in the days of so much telemetry and data. You know, an engineer can look at what's happening from what he's being told electronically, but if a driver says, actually, the way the car's performing at turn 5 is because of this, not because of what the data says, that gives them a better understanding of the vehicle dynamics. Naturally, then, the momentum of the team swings towards the driver, who can lead the technical performance of the car.
That is a skill in itself, to have the recall, to have the feel, to have the intuition in terms of the vehicle's dynamics, the vehicle's performance and behaviour on track. To be able to communicate that articulately across different engineering groups is a key communication skill that we'll see the car benefit from.
There's a sort of benign spiral for the driver then, because he's saying, you need to do this to make the car go quicker, i.e. make it faster to suit my driving style, and it's exactly what's happened at Red Bull.
Also cited as a factor in Vettel's dominance is his ability to react quickly to changes in technique, technology, and more recently, to tyres.
When Pirelli first came into Formula One, it was clear that their tyres were very different to Bridgestone, very fast wearing. So you'd have thought it would have been beneficial for all the drivers to go to Pirelli's technical facility in Turkey, learn a little bit more about the tyres. Is there anything I can do as a driver? Only one driver did that, Sebastian Vettel. Is it a coincidence that he then managed to get his tyres to survive longer than probably any other driver on the grid? Probably not.
He'd already started to work that out for himself on his own initiative, and he didn't have to just sort of sit there and wait for an engineer to tell him, right, your tyres are different this year, you've got to change your driving style. He was ahead of the game. Another key area of Sebastian's performance advantage, if you like, over the past 4 seasons has been in 2013 and in 2011, so-called exhaust-blown diffuser technology. In simple terms, means that the car gets more rear-end grip when the throttle's down and the exhausts are blown, because it blows hot exhaust gases through the diffuser and increases the downforce at the back end of the car. To master the technique, it requires the driver to do something very counterintuitive, which is floor the throttle at the moment when they'd be thinking, I need to lift off a bit here because the grip's running out. That's a very counterintuitive thing for a driver to do, but Seb was the first guy to master it. And you can see particularly how he was able to do it against his teammate, Mark Webber, who admitted himself he was never able to get comfortable with it because it felt very different from the driving technique he'd employed all his life.
He's moulded his driving style around certain advantages with the exhaust blowing or with the software on the engine, and the pair of them have become one. I almost think he should have a part number in that car, because when he's going around a corner, he looks so at one with the car. That buys him lap time. It buys him thinking time. He gets clear of the pack and the DRS zone early on in the race because he's worked hard on his qualifying, on his starts, on making sure that he puts himself in an easy situation to win the Grand Prix. Sebastian really impressed me when we drove the Q50 in Abu Dhabi. It was a go-kart track. It wasn't actually a racetrack. And he was boss of the car.
The car's impressive, actually, isn't it? Oh, yeah, keep it going, keep it going.
Sliding around, we had some fun as well. You could tell instantly that he was on top of the car. And I thought that's quite impressive, because there was about 16 or 18 corners on this tiny little track. And we were having a good conversation as well while he was doing it.
This one really sticks the back end out, doesn't it? Yeah. What do you think Rocky would be saying to you if you drove like this in your race car?
Well, I would be slow. I'd be really slow. Because obviously every kind of slide in Formula One.
Yeah, but every time we hear Rocky on the radio, he's saying, slow down, Sebastian, slow down. You don't need to go that fast. So you're cutting the corners there. This is the new thing in F1, cutting the corners.
Well, you have to use the track that you've got. Generally in single-seaters, as I got to know them at least, since Formula 3, where I learned a lot, you have to take the speed into the corner.
Now you see, you like a really firm press on the brake, don't you? You like to kill the speed early doors, yeah, and then blend off?
Yeah. You still got to manage to get a, decent exit.
Oh, that's sweet. Oh, I thought we were going to spin off there. I think you're getting the hang of this now. Ooh.